We have been talking for several weeks now about this contemplative stance business, a pattern that practiced daily can put us in a posture, a stance, an attitude toward the world. And I know many of you already have practices, and that's great. Feel free to take from this what you like, test it out for a few weeks and see what resonates with you. Something of a practice is needed for all of us to be ready, something that prepares us day in and day out to be ready and able to live as a part of God's dream for life and flourishing, not just for us, but for all of creation. Ashoka is a global leader in social entrepreneurism, especially smaller organizations making big differences. And they've studied this matter, and they've found that faith-based change-making lasts longer. Faith-based change makers are more resilient than their secular counterparts. Now, that's not just churches, and it's certainly not just Christianity. So when we are building community among ourselves, filling one another with hope and love, paying attention, showing up, cooperating with God, sharing our learning, holding one another accountable to make sure our efforts are in alignment with what God intends, all these things work together to give us a solid spiritual grounding. So this contemplative stance with its 4 really basic steps, simple but not easy, really appealed to me. However, it's not easy for people like me. If you're one of those people who's inclined to jump into action quickly, see a need and meet it, you might already have been challenged by the first 2 parts of this. Show up. Pay attention. We watched Mary show up. We watched Joseph pay attention. But those steps aren't about action at all. They really are the purely contemplative part of this contemplative stance, this building in ourselves a posture for how we take our faith into the world. But if you're a get stuff done kind of person, you may have been a little impatient with that. Today, we're moving more into your comfort zone. We're moving more into action. But first, let's recognize that the contemplative stance suggests that it's best if we don't act impulsively. It's best if we don't act impulsively and that we evaluate our instincts. And if you're interested in more of that, then the last 3 sermons are all on the website. Today we're going to see how the wise guys live into step 3, where they move into action by cooperating with God. Some of y'all just been waiting for this. We've got energy, we've got hope, we've got things to do. I'm ready, put me in, coach. So cooperate with God is a go-to-action way of being in the world. Go now, go faster, go more, go again. That's nowhere in this recipe, though. Cooperate with God. Let God lead the way. And this requires discernment. And discernment is a skill that we never master. Discernment happens when we are taught, when we practice, when we correct, when we are accountable, none of which sounds particularly holy or spiritual or any kind of fun at all. Who wouldn't rather just load up the truck with tools and get on with doing something useful? We talked about this a little last week when we noticed that our instincts aren't always helpful. We don't ignore our instincts or discount our feelings or our urges, but through practice and experience, through a contemplative stance or some other practice that you may be in the habit of using, we learn to discern when it's time to move into action and how, so that we cooperate with God. That's your part today. I am going to ask you to help me deliver the sermon, and I'll say, so that we cooperate with God. Maybe a little later you'll be more enthusiastic. So let's look at this week's Bible story, the story of the wise ones from the east. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where's the child who's been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." Wise people from out of town. We call those people consultants. And we aren't often very happy with them. But these guys are shrewd. They know how to read signs. They were academics, intellectuals, and sages. They were not kings. In spite of that song, and we have no idea how many there were of them, at least 2, because it was plural. We get the 3 from the 3 gifts, but it could have been 17 of them pooling their funds and giving a Venmo gift. You know, we don't really know. But what they weren't are kings. They were not kings. Kings are about politics and warfare and boundaries and taxes. That's not these guys. When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. Yep, all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born, and they said, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it's been written by the prophet." So these are the regular wise people already in Jerusalem. And they quote the prophet, "And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Interesting choice of words. All Jerusalem was frightened. That doesn't really mean all Jerusalem was frightened. It means when wise people from another country come, and they are not looking for diplomatic ties or improved trade relations, Jerusalem means the people in power. It's like if we said everyone in Washington was terrified. Everyone in Washington wasn't terrified. The people who had a lot of power and were worried about losing it were terrified. So right from the start of this story, we know where the trouble is going to come from for Jesus. We know where the trouble is going to come from for Jesus. And it's not the people at the bottom of the social scale, the marginalized, the struggling, or the poor. It's coming from the politicians and the rich people and the powerful. Nothing new there. Then Herod secretly called for the wise men. Never trust anybody who calls you to a secret meeting. And learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you've found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." I always feel like Snidely Whiplash, twirling his mustaches when I read that. When they heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy, and on entering the house, so we know this story happens sometime later. They're not in the stable, they're not in the cave, they're in some kind of a house. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then they opened their treasure chest, offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and having been warned in a dream, more signs for them, not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Dreams, again, call them revelations, call them annunciations, call them nudges, call them promptings. I find nudging and promptings are more useful ways of thinking about how God is talking to me. Promptings and nudgings. Mary got 1, Joseph got 3, the wise people got 2. And they show up, they pay attention. Actually, first they paid attention, then they showed up. And now, as they figure out how to cooperate with God, they put their wisdom to work. And their wisdom comes from discernment, not just knowledge. Discernment, not just knowledge. And we know that, don't we? All the stuff you know is only good if you have the wisdom to know how to use the stuff you know. And in their case, it told them clearly how to cooperate with God, and that did not involve going back toward Herod. Cooperating with God requires discernment. Again with the discernment. Okay, I've been bandying that word around for a couple of minutes now. What is it? Mary got an angel, Joseph got a couple of dreams, the wise guys got stars, and the shepherds got angels. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir of angels. And what do we get? We get the Wesleyan Quadrilateral. I'm not kidding. I'm not. It's not a direct revelation from God. I'll tell you that. But it's pretty good. It's why I'm a United Methodist. I was introduced to this concept in college, and I thought, yeah, this is for me. And it's why I make an effort to work it into a sermon at least once a year. This is your lucky day today. Methodists have this distinctive practice in using the Wesleyan Quadrilateral. I'm going to give you a really super speedy overview of it. If you want to know more, Google it. The Bible is first, Scripture. We start with Scripture. It's the foundation of the quadrilateral. We build this quadrilateral like this, okay? It has 4 sides, and the foundation of that is Scripture. And then we have what we call tradition. That's our church. That's our history. That's being a part of the community. It means not going it alone in our actions, in our study, in our thinking, in our prayer. All of it we do together. And honoring tradition means we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Even when we're embracing innovation, we recognize that our mothers and fathers in faith struggle with all the same human struggles we struggle with. And it does us good to learn how they turned to God. Then you have reason, your own good mind. One of the things I love about being a United Methodist, and we're not exclusive with this by any means, is nobody asks you to check your mind at the door. Don't do that. If some days you wake up an atheist, come on along anyway. And then, and only then, do we trust our experience, that part of us that senses God, that has that kind of ineffable experience, and the experience we have of just the wisdom we acquire from living life. Your religious practice is supposed to make you a better discerner. Your faith practices are supposed to make you a better discerner. Show up, pay attention, cooperate with God. Scripture, tradition, reason, experience, whatever you're using or whatever combination of ingredients makes up your recipe for faith. If your religion is only giving you rules or threats to conform, especially rules and threats to conform that are to the advantage of the people who have the power already, run. Run away. Run away. And think about who Jesus loved most. Whatever we do is for the least, the last, and the lost. And if what we're doing, what you're being encouraged to do by your faith is not for the least, the last, and the lost, the marginalized, the people on the edge, walk away from that. Discernment is the foundation of cooperating with God. It's built on showing up, paying attention, and listening for God's guidance. Here's what I know. Cooperating with God always moves us toward imitating Jesus. Cooperating with God always moves us toward imitating Jesus. That's one thing you can always be sure of. Ask yourself, if I do this, who benefits? If it's not the poor and oppressed, it's not from Jesus. Can you see the pain of the world? The systems that are broken? Have you felt the sadness of loss? Or watched while someone's hope has grown dim? Then you are the one God is speaking to and is asking you to show up, pay attention, and cooperate with God. And when you do this, you will hear or sense the voice of God saying, come on, we can do this together. Together. So I want to invite you into this week's contemplative prayer, contemplative body prayer. The bell choir is going to come get ready so that as we do this prayer, I'm going to ask you to let their music extend your time of prayer and meditation. You don't have to have your eyes closed except at the beginning. You can have them open. And today, listen to me now, all of you, don't applaud. Let's let this be part of our prayer and meditation. So if the person next to you who isn't really listening to me right now starts to applaud, just grab their hand, okay? All right, let's start with your feet firmly on the floor. If you're seated, sit evenly and comfortably in your chair. Don't perch, don't slouch, but relax. Shoulders back. And with your eyes closed, breathe in just a couple of times. And then silently repeat this prayer. Here I am. Here am I. I am here. And then open your eyes and let yourself be attending to what you see. Turn your head from side to side, but not too fast. Notice people, notice things. Don't just sweep by them. If you catch someone's eye, feel free to smile or wave. You might see something around you that you hadn't noticed before. Look down. Today's a good day to do that. New carpet. Look up. You don't have to look at the ceiling, but look up. Maybe there's something you hadn't noticed before. And then silently repeat this prayer. Show me what I'm missing. Show me what I'm missing. And now you're going to have to watch me for a minute, because now we're going to really get to the body part of the prayer. With your elbows out like this, put one hand like this, or like this, or like this, and you can either do this or this. I like this because it's more connected. This is God's invitation. You can also do this if you like this better. Any of these, this or this. This is God's invitation, not simply to submit to God, but to be bound to God, to be joined to God. So in this position, representing our partnership with God, silently repeat, bind me to your way. Bind me to your way. Here I am. Here am I. I am here. Show me what I'm missing. Bind me to your way.